There were some characters that, like some of the boys, I don't even know their names still. Like, I'm like, who's that kid with the
like, you know the one guy that did the one thing? No. I know. Welcome to Sinema Scrutiny!
I'm Heidi. I'm Kara.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Sam. And this is our Yopping Stance. Today we will be reviewing 1989's Dead Poets Society, directed by Peter Weir.
Warning, viewers' discretion is advised. This movie talks about topics such as suicide, suicidal thoughts, and depression. We are discussing the same topics for movie review purposes. If this upsets you in any way, just hang tight for the next video and we'll see you then. Overview. Personally, I watched this movie for the plot and the plot alone. If you know what I'm talking about, the plot, you know, the plot is well written.
The plot. It's very good.
Super attractive plot, if you know what I'm saying.
With, you know, abs.
I like the plot that had glasses.
Jawline.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of jawline
in the plot was...
Yeah, in the plot, you know. What was your favorite part of the plot? Was it Neil? Blink twice for yes. Because, yes.
I'll blink 1,000 times. Oh my gosh. Overview.
I love that there are bagpipes in this movie because you don't usually see bagpipes anywhere. And the fact that they're in the beginning and the end is fantastic because it's just a full circle moment. And if you know me, which you don't, I love a full circle moment.
And that's true. They really are going extinct. And we want to bring awareness to that too. So, donate to our GoFundMe to save bagpipes. If you're wondering about this, Sarah sadly cannot be with us today. She will be here on the next episode, but she has departed from us. Not in the Neil kind of way.
Rest in peace, Neil.
Rest in peace. She will be back.
So we made her a shrine because we love her and she's not dead.
Come back to me, baby girl.
It's like that Blues Clues episode where Steve had to go to college.
Well, guess I'm off to college.
In the arms of the angel. The first poem that is read throughout this entire movie is called To the Virgins to Make Much of Time. It says, quote, "Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a-flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying." I think it was intentional that this is foreshadowing Neil's acting, which had the whole movie was leading up to, and then unfortunately his passing at the end of the movie. You can also tell throughout the film that Robin Williams' acting wasn't just acting for him, he was feeling every emotion, and he puts that into every movie he was ever in, which was incredible to watch.
I don't think he did a movie without reading the script and figuring out whether he agreed morally with it. Obviously, Robin Williams is phenomenal, and if you know anything about movies, you know that. I think that without Robin Williams, this movie would have potentially flopped. Not because the story or the plot was bad, but just because Robin Williams is Robin Williams.
You really can't imagine anyone else playing the role that he played because he did it in just the Robin Williams way.
I don't feel like any other person could have inspired the young boys in the film to live their lives the way that they did and act the way that they did.
Keating's character just has a lot of depth to him that Robin Williams gave even more depth to, which you can see in the way that he inspires the other actors, like you said.
Yes.
And everyone was just better for him being in that film.
Yeah, like you can write a good character, but it takes someone super special to take the character off the page and bring more to the character than even just the writer did.
Yes, exactly.
Which he always did.
I also love the way the actor who played Neil portrayed his character. I think he portrayed him to be very real and relatable, and even in real life, people have parents who didn't achieve all they wanted to achieve when they were growing up. So they try to push their failed dreams onto their children, which is obviously very unhealthy. It's just so relatable because you can see the passion drain from Neil's eyes after he realizes there's no way I'm going to be able to pursue this because my parents, mainly my dad, is harping on me about it, and according to him, there's only one way out. unfortunately, he took the one way out, and it's very upsetting because he was really pretty.
Not only were the parents like not agreeing with his dreams, but they already had a dream set up for him. Like they had his entire life set up, and when he tried to pursue his own dreams anyway, they're like, okay, make a new plan, military school it is, I guess.
They basically like ripped the rug out from underneath his feet.
they gave him like no option.
Choice.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really infuriating is that obviously there wasn't only one way out. And the fact that he was driven to that point by people who were supposed to be the main people to have his back.
Right.
And protect him.
It's just so frustrating, and it makes me really sad.
And the fact that they then blame Mr. Keating for the whole thing because he chatted with Mr. Keating before the play. It's ridiculously heartbreaking.
Because they can't even see where they went wrong. In the Bible it says, check the plank in your own eye before you pick out the splinter.
The splinter of
else's.
another. Yeah.
And that's exactly what his parents were doing. And they couldn't see, like, the giant error in their ways before they were harping on their son about having a dream that wasn't necessarily going to make him a lot of money.
Right.
And they lost their son because they couldn't look past their own stupidity.
And they didn't even realize the weight of what they'd done until they actually saw him. I think the mother yelling was really sad because I think she's supposed to portray like a trophy wife in a sense, so she doesn't want to speak up unless she really has to. But that was the loudest we hear her throughout the film, is just breaking down from all the silence she's had.
She was really just going along with what Neil's dad, whatever he was deciding, she had to go along with it. Obviously, she didn't want to step out of line.
Something that really took me out of that scene, if you know what I'm talking about, was the dad slow motion yelling. I think that could have been put in there a different way, but I was completely taken out of that scene. I'm like bawling my eyes out, and then I almost wanted to laugh, as terrible as that sounds, because of the way that they set up that shot, and why was he yelling in slow motion?
The intention, you know, because it's very upsetting and sad, but
intend something different.
And obviously he didn't want his son to die. His character in itself, it just didn't feel like that's how he would respond to that situation.
Also, it was really hard to feel sympathetic for him because of how terrible he treated Neil. You do feel bad for them in a way, but at the same time, he was basically the one who drove him to that point.
Yeah, they should have given more development to the father and son's relationship as well. No matter how bad it is, I don't know how they could have set it up better, but I feel like there could have been more emotion to that scene with different things that they fixed. First of all, the slow motion shot, I mentioned that already. And we should have heard more from the mother directly to the son to understand why it was so hard for her to speak up to her husband in the first place, and why it's so heart-wrenching when it finally drives Neil to that point to do what he did, the regret she has for not speaking up about anything that they've done raising him over the years.
I feel like she was definitely being micromanaged by him, and at that point she felt like even if she would have spoken up, he wouldn't have agreed anyway and probably would have just dismissed her altogether. So
in films we see with big groups such as like the boys group and Dead Poets Society, you get to know them a lot as characters but not individually. Like you know them as a group and how well they have chemistry together, but as far as individual characters go, besides like Neil, a little bit about Todd and Knox, we didn't know much about the boys individually, and I would have liked to see more of that. It's really hard to find that balance when you have a huge group like that to split up and find all of their life stories, and sometimes when they do that it feels too loaded. So it's really hard to find that in between, but I feel like we could have had more individuality.
At the same time, like there were some characters that, like some of the boys, I don't even know their names still. Like I'm like, who's that kid with the
like, you know the one guy that did the one thing? No. I don't. Where's the grape juice? She doesn't need a lot. She isn't here. Don't tip her too far. We threw her off the table too many times. I'm ready it. Sarah!
I really like the lighting when they're like running out the door, and it's like dark in the silhouettes, and it's just very dramatic, and I like it.
The fact that they all have the same coat with their hoods up and they think they're the big cheeses. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Whoever
are.
did the costume design where everyone's dressing like a grandpa, I love you for it. I fully support your work.
Sweater.
The scene where they all have plaid on, I love it because one of their plaids, I don't remember whose plaid it was, looked like a pumpkin, and it was really fun. I also liked the scene where they didn't have shirts on.
Meeks, I'm looking for ya.
Yes, sir.
Insert our wedding photo.
I also really enjoyed Knox's character and his love story and how he was just chasing after Chris, the girl that he liked, because Mr. Keating inspired them all to carpe diem. He honestly couldn't have cared less what all those other people in the class thought of him when he brought her the flowers and read her the poem. But he did it anyway because he was fighting for that girl and he was not gonna let her go at all.
And for
Find
their
yourself a man like him.
for their first date, he took her to a play? Oh my gosh.
Be more like Knox. Can we have banners that say that?
I want to say that Todd was my favorite character of the guys because we didn't get to hear much of him, but when we did, it meant so much more.
Yeah.
Especially the ending when he finally stood up for Keating. Can we talk about how it's so uncharacteristic for the boys to all sign the paper at the end? Are you serious? And then they had the nerve to say, "Oh, Captain, my captain." Like, you filthy liar!
Exactly.
You're not a supporter of Robin Williams.
I just love how Todd's character develops to the end where he didn't want to speak up at all for himself, for his friends even. And then Mr. Keating really brought him out of his shell, especially in the one scene with the cool camera angles where they were swirling around and around.
We're gonna talk about favorite scenes later, but that is probably my favorite scene, the way they set that up.
The camera angles just add to him and his emotion in finally getting out all of these things that he's been keeping inside of him.
Yeah, it's kind of physically representing like Todd's head spinning and feeling like, you know, what do I choose? Do I choose like the passion and the words I have inside of me versus what everyone is going to think of me when I say it, because they were laughing at him in the beginning and while he's saying his stuff and the teacher's encouraging him to like speak his mind and speak his heart, and he's like, but what if they think of me? There's so much going on in that, but it's really cool to watch actually.
I love how at the end of the movie he finally speaks up for Mr. Keating because Mr. Keating did so much to impact him and his life.
That's exactly what Neil didn't do for himself.
Very
His
true.
father said, "Explain yourself." And Neil says,
Nothing.
he
That-
literally says the word nothing. And
And you can tell that's when he
didn't
made
speak up
his
for himself
decision.
at all, even though he was seemingly speaking up for himself the whole movie. But then when it actually mattered, he didn't speak up for himself, and because of that, it led to an unfortunate series of events. Then at the end, when Todd, the person that didn't speak up for himself at all, speaks up for everybody in the whole movie, that is also kind of a full circle. And
Yeah.
like, it's victory. It's like, yeah.
Even if it wasn't in the way we expected, like Mr. Keating still left the school, but he taught the children to be free thinkers, which was the point of the entire film.
Yes.
And also, what you were saying about when Neil said the word nothing, when he asked, like, explain yourself, like, the dad was finally giving him a chance to speak up for himself, like, kind of in a condescending way, but it was still an opportunity to, like, say what he wanted to and speak his mind, and you could tell in his face and the emotion that he had already made the decision of what he was going to do. There's a lot in that emotion. Like, when you're watching a movie and you see that face and you already know that he's made that choice, it's, like, heavy. It's really heavy for watchers, but he did it so well. In all honesty, I don't feel like the movie had as much information about the ending as it should have had. Questions like, what exactly happened to Mr. Keating? Where did he go after that? And I also wish for the development of Todd's writing and the friendship between him and Neil, that they would have had a funeral for Neil, and how I would have written it probably would have been that the poem that he was writing beforehand, the one that Neil was like jokingly reading out loud, he might have read at his funeral. If the funeral like did happen, I would have liked that.
Yeah, because at the end it feels like there are so many things that could be answered, and it's kind of cool that it gives you, it like leaves it up to interpretation, but at the same time it's kind of sad.
At the same time, I want interpretation.
Right. I want, you know, the after credits, like where they are now.
I wish we had confirmation that Mr. Keating's teachings went with them into their lives, like when they grew up and everything.
Evidently not, because they signed the paper.
They're dummy heads.
Cameron.
Not a fan of
Cameron's a rat!
rat.
Anyway.
A red-headed ginger rat.
Ronald Weasley! Yeah,
You're free to check the king.
The one video that Sarah's not here for, and she could reference Harry Potter so much.
Ronald Weasley!
For the time that this movie was made, I didn't feel like we actually had that many movies that portrayed boys in this sort of way, with the romantic ambition that they had and the tearful emotion. Like, we got to see a lot of different sides of all of their characters, which is a call to the acting and the way it was written, because we really didn't get to see many films like that, which was really cool for me to finally see them portrayed in that way.
Yeah.
Especially not in this time period.
They weren't all just trying to be macho men. They were actually feeling their emotions.
I am big and strong and I never cry. I don't know why I'm Russian. Okay, but hear me out. How dare they make us believe that the dad coming to see Neil's show at the end was a good thing.
Exactly. They had to trick you.
Yeah, they had me believing. I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, he came to his show, he changed his mind.
The first time that we watched it, I was like, oh, that's so sweet. But the second time we watched it, you can see in Neil's facial expression when he's looking out into the crowd and he sees his dad, you can see the color drain from his face and is slightly, he looks nervous because he sees his dad. And Mr. Keating knows that he didn't actually tell his dad everything that Neil told him because he was afraid. And it's so upsetting because they make you think that he was there to see the play. No! He was there to make him feel bad about his interests.
Yes. It's a perfect example of show don't tell, because we never actually get confirmation that that's what happened, but you totally know that's what happened.
Call back to the acting.
Exactly.
Stellar acting.
I love Neil. In terms of costuming, one of my favorite costumes in the movie is Mr. Keating's jacket, scarf, and hat combo. It's amazing, and Robin Williams is such a cute little man.
In fall movies, like, you can tell that they're specifically made for people in the fall to, like, watch this when you want to feel comfortable in the fall. The outfits are always so much better than any other movie I've ever seen.
Cozy.
Something about men in sweaters. I don't know.
Neil's green sweater.
If you wear a sweater.
I don't mean to keep bringing up Neil, but he keeps entering my thoughts.
Favorite scenes.
The first scene that I'd like to mention is the scene where Mr. Keating tells all of his boys to rip out the introduction pages of their textbooks. I really enjoy that scene because it's so out of the ordinary that they all kind of do a double take at him, and it's one of their first interactions with him, so they don't really know what to expect. And it's his first introduction of free thinking to his class, and I really enjoyed it.
If a teacher told me to rip something out of my book, I totally would.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
When he said that, I was like, oh yes.
Rebellion!
I'll get a book and do it.
There is something very rebellious about ripping pages out of a book, because we're taught from very young that you shouldn't defile books. Other than like the Bible, you can like highlight that if you want.
You're not gonna go to hell for this.
Another scene I really liked is the first time they go into the cave for their first Dead Poets Society meeting. When they leave, they end up chanting or rapping to a beat, and I just think it's very funny because I have no idea what they're saying. It's just like unintelligible boy noises. It's very funny though.
And even if you've never seen this movie, you know exactly what that sounds like.
The scene that really stuck with me was Todd's Madman poem. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then that sucks. The reason I love that scene is the camera angles, the way they're spinning around Todd and Mr. Keating's characters together and kind of portraying Todd's feeling at the time of head spinning and trying to follow his heart but also please his classmates, because he's very introverted, so he has a hard time making friends as it is.
One of my favorite scenes is when it's Todd's birthday and Neil is comforting him and they throw a disc set off a bridge, the same disc set that Todd has gotten 1 year prior. And in the scene, it just shows how it's not just Neil that's dealing with neglect from his parents and feeling pretty much obsolete in their eyes. I just love it because, one, it's funny, and two, it shows character development between the two friends.
Yeah, I think that's one of the only scenes that we actually get with just a few of the characters by themselves to actually connect and form a friendship on their own. I think we see in a lot of different films when there's like a group that gets along together really well, but you never see if they can stand on their own with just two friends compared to an entire group together, and we got to see their friendship develop there a lot in a really comedic way, which this movie is so heavy, so it needs lighthearted moments like that.
They definitely bonded over their parenthood trauma.
Yeah.
It's very adorable of them.
Just stellar.
I love the scene in the courtyard where Mr. Keating is having his class march around, because you get to see each of the different ways that they express themselves. And one of his students says, "I'm exercising my right not to walk."
Just illustrate the point.
In the scene, of course, you see Mr. Robin Williams acting phenomenally like he always does.
All of the scenes with the free thinking practices, they seem kind of odd on their own, but when you put them together and then compare it to how they act at the beginning of the film versus the ending, like they all had purpose behind them.
If you think in your own life about things that stick out from your school experience, it's when a teacher brings you out of the normal day-to-day teaching. Like, they tell you to rip something out of your book. They bring you outside. Like, just something as simple as that brings a memory, because in school, it's so conformed. They have all these boundaries in terms of that. And when a teacher goes to even just a little bit outside of it, it's memorable because you're not, following these set of guidelines. And obviously Mr. Keating does that really well.
And he made a point to connect with his students with more than just the everyday lessons that we're supposed to learn in school, and made personal connection.
So there's a scene where they're being questioned about the article and the Dead Poets Society, and Charlie gets a phone call, and supposedly it's from God, and he says that they should let girls in the school. Obviously that scene is really funny. It's really lighthearted because, why would he get a phone call from God about that? And obviously the scene that follows is meh. But that scene itself, I just like it because, again, it adds lightheartedness to this movie, and Charlie gets development in that by being able to speak up.
And development for Keating as well, because afterwards he comes and talks to the students and he's like, there's a time for expression and there's a time for caution, and a real man should know the difference between the two, which grew his character, as well as saying, I want to be an inspiration, but I'm still a teacher as well.
I
and,
also want to instill those boundaries.
Yeah,
like, be a free
morals
thinker,
for you.
But you have to know when to stop.
Yeah, when's
where
the place?
line is.
Yeah. And the final scene we have to talk about, obviously, probably the most iconic scene throughout the film, is I want to call it the captain scene, where they all stand for Keating at the end, and that just shows all of the free thinking buildup has come to this moment where we didn't get the victory ending that we expected, but Keating is still so proud of his students for finally standing up for something that they believe in and in support of him. So it was emotional for everyone in the film. I think they could have ended it a little bit differently, but that was still a pretty good way to go.
Favorite quotes?
I'm in.
It's Nawanda, Cameron.
It's not the Bible. You're not gonna go to hell for this.
If I was ever going to buy a desk set twice, I'd probably buy this one, both times.
Oh my. Well, I wouldn't worry. You'll get another one next year.
Come on, Meeks, listen to the music.
Got to get in yelping stance.
Ha! I'm a dead poet. So what are you gonna do, Charlie?
Damn it, Neil, the name is Nawanda.
Rude.
Welton Academy, hello. Yes, he is. Just a moment. Mr. Nolan, it's for you. It's God. He says we should have girls at Welton.
Come on, Cameron, don't you get anything?
I'm exercising the right not to walk.
We're not laughing at you, we're laughing near you.
Father, I thought you'd gone.
Final thoughts.
My final rating is 4 out of 5 stars because this movie really inspires you to seize the day and watch more movies with Robin Williams in them. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I could say more about Neil, but I think you got the picture.
My final rating of this movie is a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed all the characters and I really love how they connected with each other. It does cover some heavy topics, so if that upsets you, then don't watch something like that. But we struggle with things in life that are similar to this, and it's important to have movies that reflect that.
I give this movie a 4 out of 5. I love how this movie encourages you to think outside the box and ignites your imagination. I like how it talks and shows real human growth, and it's very inspiring and sad.
Thank you for watching.
My name is Sarah.
Gazoontite!
And God bless.
Roll credits, my captain!